Mr. Anupam Gupta. Anupam is the Director, Middle East of Operations of ConsenSys. And he's going to talk to us about another interesting and valuable topic for this summit. He's going to talk to us about unlocking the potential of blockchain for the food and beverage industry. Let's welcome Anupam to the stage.
Thank you, everyone. Am I audible? Yeah. So thanks for inviting ConsenSys to this auspicious conference. I represent ConsenSys. ConsenSys is a blockchain company. It does a lot of bespoke consultancy work and a lot of product development, education, and strategic consulting in the area of blockchain. We are also the advisors to the Smart Dubai office. I also represent a small company within ConsenSys called Viant. This company is very specific to supply chain, developing a supply chain platform for the enterprise. Today's discussion, what we would be doing is I would be trying to explain some of the, or articulating some of the problems plaguing the global supply chain for food industry. And then what we would be diving into a specific use case for the seafood industry. And I would be demonstrating a video also and how we have tackled that solution, that problem. So it would be short and sweet. And also coming to your point, we have a solution for you. Doesn't require a lot of human resources, very low in licensing fees, but straight to the point. Thank you. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah. So let's look at some of the statistics. Food recalls, one of the biggest problems in the global food supply chain industry. If you look at it, around 456 cases of food recalls in the US only in last year. Over 100 billion value lost in direct and indirect food supply chains. Majority of recalls and I'm just targeting the Q4 of 2017, is due to undeclared allergens, which is the food allergies, which the people do not tell as an attribute to their asset which they are supplying to the market. Foreign material contamination, we have all heard about E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria, recalls of spinach, which has been a big, big nightmare for the US industry. Bananas, mislabeling. I mean, this is also something, a gross violation of standards and conduct. And quality standards, which is done by the regulators. So if you look at it, that's the percentage of the majority recalls, 45, 30, 13, and 10%. And some of the major recalls or outbreaks last year, which had happened and dominated the news across the world. One of them, and they give it great names: botched breadcrumbs, soy nut butter E. coli, and bat salad. So all are cases where some or the other there has been a miss in the supply chain. Coming to the next. So as a focus for the seafood industry, the Greenpeace, which is an organization which is pretty eco-friendly, which has this environmental and ecosystem reports, which it churns out. It came out with a report called Misery at Sea, and it highlighted some of the human rights abuses in the fishery industries. Oceania, which is also a nonprofit organization, came up with a study that around 59% of tuna, which is sourced, is mislabeled, and around $23 billion of global fishery value is lost in illegal, unreported, and unregulated activities. So the game is huge, and so is the challenge. So the conclusion is, the experts say that they view that the full supply chain traceability and transparency is the only way to ensure against the continued entry of illegal or unethically produced food products into the food supply chain. So I would like to define the two words, traceability and transparency. So traceability is just a system of records designed to track the whole product flow from point A to point B through the entire supply chain process, while transparency is actually having the full knowledge of the provenance. Provenance means the origins, where the product originated, what are the attributes of the product, how it has been added over the supply chain. So that's what, if somebody can provide that level of detail, then we term it as a transparency in the supply chain. So the major effects of illegal and unethical product entry, definitely monetary loss due to entry of counterfeit products in the food supply chain. Public health hazard, all these outbreaks of salmonella, E. coli, and contaminated milk, whatever you hear about it. Unacceptable labor usage, which is a very, very big issue right now. And low consumer confidence. Once you have had a bad taste with a product, you won't go and get that product again, or you would be having second doubts on that. So what's the solution? And one of the direct solution which comes into mind is blockchain. I mean, it's a brilliant piece of technology. The components of that technology were actually developed over 20 years period, but one brilliant gentleman actually, by the fake name of Satoshi Nakamoto, came up with the idea, and I'll elaborate in the next slides. And that's what we hear about as Bitcoin. And Bitcoin was one of the first applications of the technology, which now we popularly call as the blockchain. So the blockchain is a technology that increases trust and transparency in the system by storing all transactions in a decentralized manner. So what does it mean, actually? So it simply means that everyone in the system can check those transactions, whoever is the party involved. So what essentially it is giving is trust in a trustless environment. So that's what we are talking about, that everyone in the system can check those transactions, verify the accuracy of the transactions, and even to the extent that people, the cryptographical security gives you this power that even the parties won't know about each other's transactions also, because it's all cryptographically coded and encoded. One of the things that's also in the blockchain is it's a consensus-based data append by the actors. That means whatever is the data is being added to that ledger or that database is based by consensus. So all the parties in the system actually vote that, yes, this is the data we want to be appended into that system. And based upon a consensus, and there are many ways of consensus, the data would be added. So even the Economist magazine called it the trust machine. And there's a huge article about it, which actually propelled it to the limelight. So what it brings about, and the advantages are on the right-hand side: trust in a trustless environment. You can track the true provenance of the product, which has been, which is put in the supply chain. You could actually protect a lot of public health because you know actually where the product came from, what are the attributes of the product. Premium for sustainable produce. If you are giving these kind of services, people would be giving or would be appreciating that effort, and you can actually charge a premium for that produce itself. Reduce recall scope, increase consumer trust, quality assurance and value chain efficiencies, and so on and so forth. So this is what we were saying, that the Bitcoin announcement, and it's actually, if you look at the date, it's 31st October 2008, and today is 8th of November 2008. It has been exactly 10 years to this announcement. And this has been, the world once thought it was just a matter of value exchange, turned out into something much, much huge, and which has practically implications in every industry in the world. So in a nutshell, how this works, and I'm just giving you the monetary example. Person A wants to send person B some money. The transaction is represented online as a part of a block that, OK, A gives something to B. This block, and this computer is actually, the code of running on this computer is running on 1 million machines also. This represented information is then broadcast to every member of the network. All the members of the network approve of this particular transaction. Yes, A is rightfully giving it to B. And then this information is added to the database. And that's how the money is considered transferred from A to B. That's a very, very high level and simple representation of the technology. So it's an analogy that if Bitcoin was one of the applications, so it's like a calculator application, then came the new technology that's called the Ethereum, which is a full-fledged computer, which we call as a universal computer. And Bitcoin or the monetary applications just acts as one of the applications. So the calculator is one of the applications in the computer. So that's the analogy we are putting out. The blockchain has 4 fundamental features which makes it unique. It's cryptographically secure. So the amount of, the cryptography, there's various levels of cryptography. One of it is called the hashing algorithms, where the information is stored in a one-way cryptography, that once that information gets translated into that hash, there is no way going back. So that hash cannot be broken back and recovered into the original document, which gives it the unique ability to develop it as a fingerprint technology. So you do not have to actually store the entire data on the database, but what you can store as the fingerprints information only on the database, and everybody can check it out. It is distributed, so there's no need. The redundancy factor already comes into the picture, because the copies of the database is made on practically every machine on the network. It is immutable. Once anything has been written on the blockchain, it cannot be destroyed. It cannot be destroyed. So this gives us extreme power that nobody can tamper it. And it can work with smart contracts. So smart contracts is the ability to write both data and smart logic, which can run on the blockchain. So just giving an example here for smart contracts. It is the code that is stored on the blockchain and self-executes using the trust and security of the blockchain network. Ethereum in specific gives something called a Turing complete machine, where there is something called an Ethereum virtual machine, a piece of daemon code which runs on every machine, and which helps in putting that consensus out by every machine that whether the data or the information should be appended to the blockchain. So that's what we are representing here. So using all this, how we could help take blockchain in the global supply chain is by exploring a particular case of tuna fishing industry and the supply chain mechanism. So practically, if you look at this chart, so this example, what we call as the bait to plate. So from bait to the plate when the tuna is served. So there is a supply chain process, which we are actually seeing it out. And at every level, we can catch or capture the information of the produce, which is the tuna, and at every level, we can append attributes of that catch. So if the fisher has caught what kind of fish it has caught right from the beginning, to what gradation of that fish is, what state of that fish is, and at every level, that information can be appended, and it kind of creates a full database, and which is non-tamperable. So at any point, all the actors, which is the fisher, regulator, processor, distributor, consumer, can see this whole thing, and it is non-tamperable also. So with the application of Viant, we can use very simple RFID, QR code technologies to get this entire information. Not only this particular application can be used in fishing industry, but practically any industry also. So what I would like to show you is a video of how we have done this particular thing in association with World Wildlife Federation and the Fijian tuna industry. Yep. So that was Wind, and sure. Sorry. Yeah. So that was Wind, and just to give a recap of Wind, it's a platform. It's a very quick and easy to use platform which we have built. It's a next generation blockchain-based platform for modeling business processes, tracking assets, and building the transparent, flexible supply chains of the future. The good part is it's pretty easy to use, and it has an inbuilt process and asset modeler. And within one click, the smart contracts, which we were saying, which is a hard technology actually, they would be automatically coded and deployed over the blockchain. And you can practically integrate it with any kind of RFID or IoT solutions to put the whole supply chain in process. So that's from my side. Thank you. Thank you. Yep. Yeah, sure. Thank you.
It's open to questions.
Yes, hello. Just a short question, really, but I think it might be a big one. I don't know. I don't really understand what is the benefit of blockchain. I mean, could you not do this whole thing with a normal database? If it is a big advantage, then what is that advantage?
Am I audible? Yeah. Sorry. Definitely you can do it, and many companies like FedEx or DHL are using it. But these are centralized systems. So if they have the whole complete control of whatever the data they are storing from point A to point B. If there is an audit or if there is an appeal, what is the probability that the data they would be providing to you is correct? Because it's your own data. So the blockchain is actually a trustless medium. So where many actors can actually come and latch to it, and it provides a trustless medium. One, if it is trustless and immutable, then you know that when the thing was changed, written something back in the past, it cannot be tampered in the future. So that kind of assurance it gives you. So it is an audit trail, a complete audit trail with many actors feeling completely confident on that particular latching on medium to interact. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know with blockchain there would be a lot of questions. Yeah.
Is there a way to trace back things like powders or liquids? Or do you have to then trace the vessel or the container, the liquid or the powders in?
Powders and liquids.
Yeah, say in a value chain where you produce something out of resources or sources like that.
Yeah, see, it all depends upon how many data points you're trying to capture and how many actors are there and how many inputs of capturing you are also putting it. So as a sustainable producer, it's my prerogative to tell my consumers that how good is my product or how much provenance tracking is there on the product. So if I have illegally introduced something in the supply chain and I'm not telling them, then definitely the system won't know it. But then that is the work of the auditors and the people who would be cross-checking the whole system, where they would say, no, you please introduce somewhere at this point and one more element where that trackability happens. So considering, I mean, because tuna or any kind of food product is very perishable. So it has to happen in like a period of a couple of days. Maybe granary or those kind of things can take a lot longer period of time. But these kind of products have, you have very little time to actually from the bait to the plate, basically. If it is caught in Fiji today evening, then probably day after morning it would be on the Japanese food market actually. So definitely that time gives you, there are a couple of challenges. One, you would say how many checks I can introduce in that period of time. The second thing is, it also, the advantage is you cannot go around the system also in the shortest possible time. So it depends upon how much you want to, it's on your prerogative how much you want to give or the history about the provenance to the customer. Yeah. 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 Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, just one question, I think it's an important question.
All right.
Just concerning the Bitcoin here, what's in the process can come, and also the data you mentioned that can be like several people agreed about this and they are accepted this kind of transaction.
Correct. So, see, one of the things which blockchain has introduced, and I'm talking in a very generic term, is the consensus mechanism. So consensus means if these technologies, let me go back in history, these technologies have been here for a long period of time. Like, it's called the distributed ledger technology, which has been in principle in the world for around 15 years or 20 years time. So the ledger is distributed amongst many participants, but the authenticity of the information on that ledger was the prerogative of only a few parties, that some parties could write that information, the others were only the recipient of that particular thing. But blockchain gives you this kind of, what you can say, a global medium or a consensus medium where if an information is being appended, it is after a consensus. And consensus could be many ways. Maybe you say 60% of the people vote, then only something can be added. So this gives an authenticity to the information which is being added over to the blockchain. So consensus is something extremely important, and also in the Bitcoin, consensus along with cryptography gives you a bulletproof security to the information which is being appended to the blockchain. Yeah.
For this example of tuna, can you explain this, please?
So in the tuna example, maybe rough consensus is required, not a full consensus is required, where an append information, suppose from the guy who's taken from the fisheries, is appending that information. Maybe some party down the track, it's a yellowfin tuna, and somebody said, no, it's maybe a pinkfin tuna. So that kind of information can be challenged. So there are checks and builds which can be put. In enterprise blockchain, we have the consensus mechanism, but in very, very different flavors. It could happen that some of the origination or the provenance things could not fall under the consensus mechanism. Somebody could be a trusted party, and he or she can, or the entity can put the information there. While later on, certain elements could be consensus based. So there is a way in which enterprise would adopt blockchain. But in a public blockchain, when we call as a public blockchain, which has millions of nodes around the world, at that point, the consensus is most important. And something called as the Byzantine fault-tolerant consensus mechanism is there. Yeah, thank you. Sure.
One small question.
Yeah.
Apologies, actually, we are really falling short of time.
Can we talk
actually,
offline?
Okay.
Yeah, please meet him. And the other thing is, there's a portal we have, which is the Gulfood application. You can go to the speakers section. Please go to the particular session, follow the trail, and put in your question there, and we'll hopefully be able to take it up later during the day. Or please meet Anupam at any point in time. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.